Today I am joined by Glenn Grant, ex-advisor to Ukraine's defense minister, Gilbert Doctorow, Russian affairs expert, Professor Madhav Nalapat, and Professor Patrick Lancaster, war journalist. I want to come to you, Glenn Grant. I want to ask what is Kyiv's position on this alleged missile attack that they launch into Russian territory, and how is this incident being framed by Ukrainian media?
I'm sorry, but I don't think it is being framed by Ukrainian media at all. I mean, this is a missile attack in the middle of a war. There are plenty of them. And you may, I noticed that you didn't actually speak it, you may not have noticed that there's actually another counterattack started in the Kursk area. So there will have been plenty of missile attacks going on all over the front line to try and hold down troops and to take people's minds off actually what is happening. In terms of the journalist being killed, this is only the 18th journalist being killed in this war compared to 150 in Syria. People don't go out deliberately to target journalists, but war journalists, war correspondents are right up in the front line, and they are going to get killed just the same as everybody else. It's probably the most risky profession after being a soldier in the world.
This war, obviously, there's speculation about this war coming to an end soon. Do you see that happening? Glenn Grant, sorry.
Yeah, so Russia is not going to stop at the moment. Putin thinks he's winning. He's going to keep going. And I don't think that anything that Trump or anybody else is going to say at the moment is going to stop him.
Thank you very much, Glenn Grant, for joining us. I want to move on to Professor Madhav Nalapat. What is the potential consequences of Russia's retaliation?
Well, I think Zelenskyy will be hoping that the consequences will be such as to draw the United States directly into a conflict, thereby presenting a conundrum for incoming President Trump. I think not just Zelenskyy, but a lot of people within the Biden administration as well have been busily laying all kinds of landmines for Donald Trump to step on. I think they're proving to be very bad losers, not in words the way Trump was, but in practice. So frankly, I think Zelenskyy is hoping that Putin will expand the war significantly and in a way create as large a zone of conflict that the United States has willy-nilly to be dragged in it, and Trump will find it difficult to stop it. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Putin is taking a very measured stance, and I think he realizes that this is a very provocative attack. There will be a very hard-hitting attack on Ukraine. There can be no doubt about that. Possibly it involves some newer missile and other systems that the Russians have been developing. You know, last time around they tested the Oreshnik. This time around they may test something else. But the reality is, I don't think Putin is going to be drawn into a larger war. He's not going to fall into Zelensky's trap. And as for, he's got a limited purpose in Ukraine, and he's secured about 80% of that purpose. I agree with Glenn that he's going to continue until secures 100% of that purpose. And further, he would like to ensure that Ukraine never become part of any hostile alliance. That would be a given. So I think, yes, he is going to continue the war until these conditions are met. He gets the whole of territory that he wanted in the beginning of the war, and he makes sure that Ukraine is not in a position to join any military alliance after the war. Thank you.
And Professor Nalapat, I wanted to ask, what are the potential international consequences of Russia retaliation? How might it impact NATO's involvement?
Look, I don't think the people running NATO are going to be unwise enough to get directly involved. So far, they've done a very, very good job of ensuring that the whole war is kept subcritical, so they don't have to go in. And may I point out to you that over the last 1 year, the public opinion has soured on the Ukraine war and frankly soured on Zelensky. That's happening also in Ukraine. So I don't think there's any appetite among Western voters to go in for a war with Russia, not at all. The reality of the situation is people like George Soros, I'm sorry to say, judging by many of his actions, people like Joe Biden are still stuck in the old Cold War with the Soviet Union, forgetting it's now the Russian Federation. And as a consequence, they're giving China a free pass in the actual Cold War taking place, which is Cold War 2.0 between the democracies and China.
Thank you very much. Patrick Lancaster, I wanted to move on to you next. Obviously, you have been on the ground in the conflict. I want to ask what kind of damage one of these ATACMS missiles do.
Yeah, hi. Glad to be on again. Those the type of missiles do a lot of damage, and the fact of the permission being given to fire them deep into Russian territory, of course, inflamed the situation. But the situation on the ground in the war zone is now very, very complicated, as we know, with Russia taking a lot of territory almost every day, taking control of from Ukrainian forces. And a lot of these civilians are waiting in these territories and actually welcoming Russian forces. So as far as the side from Ukraine, it's pretty difficult for them, because the population of these territories that Russia is taking control of is actually in most times supporting the Russian forces. But the daily events here on the ground are very hard for not only the civilian population, but journalists as well, and first responders. Just in the last 24 hours, there has been, unfortunately, 6 journalists injured and 1 journalist killed just in the last 24 hours by Ukrainian drone attacks, because what Ukraine is doing with these drones is targeting civilian vehicles. And many journalists have been injured and killed over the last years and months, and many civilians. I myself have seen many civilians killed by these target attacks on civilian vehicles by Ukrainian forces. We're not talking about just personal cars, but also city buses and things like that. And it's not a chance of an accident at this point. These drone operators of the Ukrainian forces are seeing the live footage from the cameras on the drone and choosing to target these civilian vehicles and civilian...
Gilbert Doctorow, I wanted to bring you in there. What is your response? Have you heard anything about Ukrainian civilian attacks on... Ukrainian civilian attacks?
Well, that is one of the most important features in Russian news. And the Ukrainians have used the ATACMS missiles primarily against residential buildings. This is what is called terror. When you strike intentionally, target civilians either by these kamikaze drones, as the previous panelist just described, or if you're using larger missiles to attack residential buildings, then you are practicing terror. And there's a reason for terror. Terror is what you do when you cannot fight on the ground fair and square with your troops and have any chance of winning. The Ukrainians are not just losing territory, they're losing men. They're losing men on the battlefield every day, whether it's 1,000 or 2,000, that depends on which front you're looking at. And they are rolling back. That is most important. It's not just a capture of territory, but the Ukrainian forces are retreating without having any place to build a secure protection for themselves. So this will keep on going to the Dnieper River.
Sorry, what do you say to the reports that came out of the Kursk region today of large amounts of Russian troops and even some North Korean troops being killed there?
That is possible. I would take with a grain of salt any announcements coming from Kiev. They have been unapologetic propagandists from the get-go. And so it is today. All of their numbers are unbelievable. The regrettable thing is that the American intelligence agencies are carrying this phony, false information from Kiev and giving it to the American leadership, to Mr. Biden and those around him. And so American policy is being based on falsehoods which are coming from Kiev. And that is sad, if not tragic.
Thank you very much for joining us.